Welcome everyone to our first student loan workshop of the day, our first event of the day for the Free My Future Summit that NextGen Policy is so generously hosting. We are excited to have you all here today and that you're taking a step in understanding, student loans, what's been going on with them, and we're going to do our best to try to help you. Moving forward. So today we are joined with a really wonderful team. I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the director over at Student Debt Crisis. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the way we pay for education in America. And from our team, I'm joined by Cody Hunanian. Cody, hello.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. This is one of the most rewarding things we do here at Student Debt Crisis, and along with our partners like NextGen Policy and Savi, just getting to spend the morning helping people understand their own student debt situation. So honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cody. We also have Samantha Singh, policy advisor with NextGen Policy. Samantha?
Yes, hi Natalia, and good morning everyone. Sam Singh with NextGen Policy. We're a nonprofit political advocacy organization. We work on a variety of issues, but we definitely focus on student debt, and we work on programmatic efforts, legislative efforts, regulatory efforts here in California. And so thanks for having us, and thanks for joining us at our summit.
Great, thank you, Sam, and thanks for hosting. And last but certainly not least, we have Lindsay Clark, Director of Partnerships over at Savi. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Natalia. Great to be here. As Natalia said, I'm Director of Partnerships and External Affairs at Savi. We are a social impact tech startup based in Washington, D.C., and we try to help student loan borrowers navigate the complicated repayment and forgiveness process. So this is my favorite event last year, to be able to work with borrowers one-on-one with Natalia, Sam, and Cody. So excited to be back and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we can move on to the next slide, but we know you all are joining us today on YouTube. So we did email a lot of you letting you know that the best way to ask us questions is via your YouTube account. So we do have folks from all of our teams on YouTube trying to help you answer your questions, and we will be taking questions and hopefully answering them properly through the course of this workshop. So it's our goal to, give as much information as we can in this short amount of time. In addition, and we'll share this in the chat, but Savi will be hosting open office hours starting at 12:30 p.m. Pacific, 3:30 Eastern. So if you don't get your question answered, there still will be time then. In addition, this is, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, part of our second annual Free My Future Summit. And during today's clinic, we want to talk to you about basics of student loans, affordable repayment options, and student loan forgiveness programs that currently exist. We want to talk about the most recent policy updates via executive action and the CARES Act, and how you can get involved to help us in the student debt crisis once and for all. Moving forward. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sam Singh with NextGen Policy to give us a scope of what's going on with the student debt crisis. Sam?
Yes, thanks, Natalia. So as we begin today's workshop, we're going to want to start off with recognizing that student loan debt is a significant burden that unfortunately, you're not alone. So there's 45 million Americans with student loan debt, and that comes to a total of $1.7 trillion nationwide. The average student borrower holds around $37,172 in debt, and 8 million borrowers, unfortunately, are behind on their loans. And on this next slide, we also know that the debt is disproportionately carried by some communities more than others. So on the next slide, nope, we're on the right one. This is a crisis that is widespread and crosses into many different communities. So we know that 2/3 of that total $1 trillion of debt is held by women. 56% of that is also held by Black women, and 31% of Latinx borrowers unfortunately don't complete and half of the Black borrowers are behind on their payments, unfortunately. So on the next slide, we also know that the burden of student loan debt has a domino effect, and it isn't just an issue about debt. It's a lot of overwhelming debt, and this is an economic crisis, a civil rights issue that will have a bigger societal impact as those with student debt are struggling to pay day-to-day living expenses, especially during this pandemic. And so we know the average 30-year-old borrower has $8,000 less in wealth because of student debt, and especially Black borrowers are $10,000 in the red. And student debt also prevents buying a home or car. More than half first-time home buyers found saving for a down payment difficult because of student debt. And again, Latinx borrowers are more prone to unemployment, especially during times of economic crisis like the current COVID-19 pandemic. So we go over these numbers just to, show you that you're not alone. This isn't something that's anybody's fault. This is a systematic issue. And so hopefully, again, today we can help you work through some of this. On the next slide. So we're going to start off with some very basics of student loans. You see here, we're going to go over, well, that's the next session we're going to do, and then we'll pass it on to some online resources and other important notes. So moving on to the next slide. On a much broader level, there are two types of loans, federal and private loans. So on federal loans, these are provided on a need-based. They're subsidized or have unsubsidized interest, and they're on a fixed interest rate. They come with different repayment options, hardship deferment, there's loan forgiveness programs, and there are pathways for rehabbing defaulted loans. On the other hand, though, private loans, it's given out based on your credit history. Interest begins immediately. There's variable interest. There's no repayment plans or hardship deferment. And then if your loans are in default, you'll have to go into negotiation with your private lender. On the next slide, there are three different types of federal loans: direct, Perkins, and federal family education loans, also called FFEL. So direct loans are given by the federal government, where the money is funded by the federal government as well. And nearly all newer federal student loans are direct loans, and they qualify for the most repayment programs and loan forgiveness options. Perkins loans are the types of federal loans that you are awarded by your university or education institution. On your FFEL loans, these are the most oldest of federal loans. They were given by the government, but the money came from private banks. If you do have one of these older loans, you qualify for some but fewer federal programs. So keep in mind also that you may have a mix of all of these three different types of loans. And on the next slide, we're going to go into what are your federal servicers. So federal loan servicers are contracted by the Department of Education to handle or service your loan. So technically their jobs are paid for by taxpayer dollars to provide these services if you have a student loan and walk you through the lifetime of that loan. So what they are supposed to be doing and what they will be doing are apply payments to your account, process them to the right account, so make sure that that gets there. They provide income-driven repayment plans, deferment, and they're the ones that will enroll you into these options as well, so deferment, forbearance, and loan forgiveness programs. They are supposed to be sending information to you about your account, so statements, bills, and other important messages. And on the next slide, it's really common that many borrowers have a mix of federal and private loans. So here are some names to help you recognize if you have a federal or private student loan servicer. Please, so we have like Nelnet, Great Lakes is our federal servicers. And then on the other hand, private servicers are like SoFi, Wells Fargo, Sallie Mae. And then please note that some servicers also service both federal and private loans. So you'll see Navient in both of those sections. All right, and then on the next slide. So if you want to make sure you know the status of your loans, a good place to start is to go to studentaid.gov. So again, that's studentaid.gov. studentnaid.gov. And once you get there, you'll want to log into your account or create one. And then what will pull up on that account will be all your federal loans. So if you're getting mail or paperwork from another company that isn't showing there on studentnaid.gov, chances are you're also holding a private student loan. And make sure you are going to studentnaid.gov specifically. There are many sites that imitate the federal website to gain access to your personal information. So we will be sure to put that into the chat as well and make sure that you go to the right website. All right, and now we're going to go to the next slide. So if you want to find information about your private student loans, what the current status is, again, if you're not seeing it on studentnaid.gov, it's highly likely that that is a private student loan. Other ways to tell if that loan is a private student loan, that one would have required a cosigner. Most federal loans don't. And you can review your credit report to confirm your loans are all there. They'll show up there. And the best way to get the most updated information on your private student loan would be to contact your lender or servicer directly. And so that concludes the section on basics of student loans. We'll be moving on to the next section of today's workshop with COVID-19 updates with Cody. Cody, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much, Sam. It's always great to start with the basics because when we talk to student loan borrowers, so many of the issues they face come from just starting with not understanding some of the basics. Our loan companies, the loan servicers, and the Department of Ed are not really great at educating us. So thank you for taking us through that. Now on to COVID-19 policy updates. I've already seen some folks in the YouTube chat talk about some of the confusion that they're facing. So we really want to spell this out for everyone before we dive into repayment options. So let's go to the next slide and I'll explain some of the updates. So initially, you likely heard that Congress temporarily suspended payments and waived interest for federally held student loans. This was something that was done automatic to student loan accounts. So if you had a qualifying federal student loan, you've already had your payments on pause for several months. The suspension of payments counted towards progress in public service loan forgiveness and loan rehabilitation programs. For those of you that are familiar with public service loan forgiveness, you know that you've been making progress each month when you make a payment towards having your loans forgiven. So that was the first thing that a lot of borrowers told us is, if my payments are on pause, is that going to count? And yes, it did. That was good news. The suspended payments were also treated as on time for credit report issues. There was a lot of concern that this pause in payments would detrimentally hurt people's credits, which obviously has a domino effect on people's finances. Unfortunately, this suspension of payments wasn't perfect. It suspended what we call federally held student loans, but there are commercially held student loans that come from the federal government. These are some of the older federal family education loans and many of the Perkins loans, because while these were awarded through the Department of Education, the funds came from a commercial bank. It's a bit of an important nuance, but it excluded 9 million loans. So there are still millions of people with student loans that haven't received any relief during this pandemic. Now on the next slide, there are additional benefits to this relief. If you were in default on your student loans, you likely were facing what we call involuntary collections. So that includes wage garnishment and tax and Social Security withholdings. We hear from a lot of older borrowers who are missing out on their Social Security benefits because of their student loan payments, their student loans being past due. That's on pause. It also stopped the debt collection practices. If you were receiving all of those pesky calls and letters from debt collectors, that should have been on pause starting from this benefits, when these benefits started in March. And lastly, there were some benefits for entering and current students. If you were taking out a direct federal loan to pay for a program and you could not complete, you had to withdraw from the program, you may be able to have your loans discharged or canceled due to the pandemic. Now, on this last slide, I want to clarify the most recent updates because this has been a rapidly changing student loan policy environment. Now, Congress started this relief back in March, and it was 6 months of benefits. But when that was set to expire, the President, Donald Trump, extended the pause on payments and interest until December 31st. So payments are on pause, interest is still being waived, it still counts towards public service loan forgiveness, it still counts towards loan rehabilitation programs. Now, the big thing that we are warning borrowers about is that means that on January 1st, millions of Americans are going to be set back into repayment unless Congress or the President extends this further. So as advocates, we are working diligently to try to extend this. We just spoke with journalists this morning about how difficult it's going to be for borrowers to come back on January 1st, right after the holidays, and enter repayment. We are also hearing that student loan servicing companies are going to have trouble getting millions of people back on. So this is something we're working on, but we need folks to know that right now on January 1st, federally held student loans are expected to resume payments. So that is what's been happening in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But let's go into the next slide where we can start to talk about what have been the long-lasting federal repayment options for student loan borrowers. We're going to talk about all of the repayment options that existed prior to the pandemic and what your options are going to be after the relief in response to the COVID-19 pandemic are. So first, let's start with the standard repayment, some of the hardship options that exist. And I see a lot of folks in the chat have talked about loan consolidation. We want to clarify what that means. So let's go to the next slide and talk about our standard repayment. So when a borrower leaves their program, they have what we call a 6-month grace period where payments are not expected. But as soon as that ends, a borrower is automatically placed in what we call the 10-year standard repayment. That means that a borrower is placed on fixed monthly payments where their monthly payment is the same every month for 10 years. And so that means that after 10 years, your student loans would be paid off. That is not always something that's affordable for borrowers. So in a moment, we're going to get into affordable repayment options. Now, while there is the 10-year standard repayment, there is also a host of alternative repayment options. So let's go to the next slide. Perfect. Now, these alternative options do exist. We like to get them out of the way ahead of time because we're going to really spend time focusing on affordable options. But these do exist, and you're likely going to hear about them from your loan company. So one of the options is called extended repayment. That is where you literally extend the length of your payment. So you go from 10 years to, let's say, 20 years. That means that your monthly payments are lower, but since you're paying over a longer period of time, that means that you may accrue more interest, which can cost more over the lifetime of the loan. There's also a thing called graduated repayment. That looks a lot like kind of a variable loan, meaning your payments start lower early on, and every couple of years or so, your payments increase. Borrowers may find that appealing, but what it can mean is that some borrowers get into a scenario where their payments increase in the future, and their income doesn't increase. And so it becomes more difficult over time. Lastly, there's what we call extended graduated repayment. That is a combination of the two of these programs. Now, there are two options available for temporary hardship on the next slide here. We call this deferment and forbearance. Now, I have to really stress that we consider deferment and forbearance as temporary emergency options for borrowers. If you're going to have long-term difficulty affording your payments, then there's going to be options coming up in the next few slides that are more beneficial. But we have to talk about deferment and forbearance because when borrowers call their student loan company, they're often recommended these options no matter what their scenario is. So a deferment and a forbearance is a pause on your payments, or it can mean a lowering of your monthly payments. In a deferment, if you have subsidized loans, you won't see interest accrue. In forbearance, no matter what type of student loan you have, you're going to have interest accrue during this pause in payments. Now, again, these are temporary options because they only can be used for a specific period of time. So if you contact your student loan servicer and you need long-term relief and they tell you about these programs, just be aware that there are longer-term options that we're going to discuss momentarily. Now, loan consolidation. I saw a lot of people in the chat asking about loan consolidation. So let's just address that real quickly. A loan consolidation is used to combine multiple student loans into a new single loan with one payment. Now, you might have 10 student loans when you leave school, and that can mean that you have to make 10 separate monthly payments. That can be really complicated and inconvenient for borrowers, and so a consolidation can help make that an easier process. Now, you can also consolidate if you have a single loan that doesn't qualify for specific federal programs. You know, for example, if you have one of these federal family education loans and you weren't eligible for COVID-19 relief, you could have consolidated into a new direct loan, and that may have made you qualify for this relief. Now, consolidation can only be done once, and there's a host of consequences that come with consolidation, including capitalized interest and other things. So we highly recommend that borrowers talk to their loan servicer and go to the Department of Education's website so that they understand what a consolidation will mean for themselves. And lastly, consolidation can be used to get out of default. If you're facing a student loan default scenario early on in the process, you can use consolidation because what it means is you're essentially creating a brand new loan. You're wiping the slate clean. But again, that is a topic that is very sensitive, and we encourage borrowers to learn more about what that decision will mean for them. Now, lastly, in this section, there are options for people who are in federal student loan default. Now, a default means that you are 270 days past due on your federal student loans. You know, if you're 1 day past due on your account, you may be considered delinquent, but it's not going to mean much for you in long-term consequences. At 90 days past due, that's when your past due account is reported to the credit bureaus. So you'll face negative credit reporting issues. And then when you default on 270 days past due, that's when a slew of other consequences may be something you have to face. And that can mean fees added to your account. It can mean not being eligible for federal financial aid. In some places, it's very punitive. You may not be able to be eligible for law enforcement positions, military service. So federal student loan default has very significant consequences, and we want people to know that there's options to get out. So on this next slide, I want to address default loan rehabilitation. So if you're a borrower that's in default and you have a federal student loan, there is a program meant for you to get out of default and return to good standing. Now, what it means is the borrower must make 9 monthly payments on time within 10 months. For this program, a monthly payment means a level that's reasonable and affordable. So it's a monthly payment based on your income level. And for some borrowers, that can mean as little as $5 per month. Now, a borrower can only complete student loan rehabilitation once. And we hear from a lot of borrowers that complete the program, they go back to their monthly payment and they fall into default all over again and they have no options. So you're going to want to know that after default rehabilitation, there are affordable repayment programs offered by the federal government that you're going to want to enroll in immediately after so you can avoid falling into default again. So let's dive into income-driven repayment on the next slide. I've already teased this a couple of times. Income-driven repayment are the affordable monthly payment options that exist for long-term difficulty paying off your student loans. Now, on the next slide, I quickly break down income-driven repayment plans. These are programs designed to make your payments more affordable, and it's designed to do so by calculating your payment as a percentage of your, quote, discretionary income. This is a formula that's at the Department of Education's website. Essentially, your monthly payments are based on your income and your family size. So instead of being based on your total loan amount, your payments could be as low as $0 per month if you have very low income. And that's the power of an income-driven repayment plan. So let's go to the next slide here, and I'll break down what these programs look like. Now, leave it up to the federal government to make this very dense and complicated. We currently have over 5 programs that are available to borrowers. At the bottom of this chart here, you can see what we call income contingent repayment. That is the oldest of the affordable repayment plans. Your monthly payment is 20% of your discretionary income, and you pay in these programs for up to 25 years. Every year you recertify for one of these programs to stay in it, and at the end of the programs, whatever debt is remaining can be forgiven. And as we work our way up this chart, you can see the newer programs like Revised Pay-As-You-Earn have much lower monthly payments, and the time frame can be 5 years lower at 20 years. So I'm not going to get into all of the specific details for these programs because we just don't have time today. So go to the Department of Education's website and reach out to your student loan servicer to learn more about which income-driven repayment plan works best for you. On the next slide, here's an example. If you're a borrower who's single with 1 child and you have $37,000 in student loan debt, your standard repayment in the 10-year standard plan would have been $364 per month. In an income-driven repayment plan, if you make $0, you're currently unemployed or furloughed because of the pandemic, you could have a monthly payment as little as $0. Even at $25,000 in income, your monthly payment would be significantly reduced at $49 per month. And you can see here on this chart at $50,000 and $75,000 in yearly income, you still receive some relief on your monthly payments. So what does it take to enroll in one of these programs? Now, you have to submit an application. You can get that through your student loan servicer, or you can visit the Department of Education's website. You can fill it out via paper form or online. When you submit your paperwork, it takes about 30 days to process. Once you're accepted, you'll be entered into your repayment plan. As I mentioned, you have to recertify every year. So what that means is every year you show proof of income. Some of that can be automatically inputted based on your IRS tax filings, or you can submit your own proof of income, and that adjusts your monthly payment every year based on whatever your income is. Now, I have to note that while you have to recertify every year, you can recertify anytime throughout the year. That's so important right now during the pandemic. If you recently lost your job or you have reduced hours, you can recertify right now and have your monthly payments adjusted. Now, if you miss your deadline in 12 months, don't worry, you can still reapply and re-enter the program. But be aware that missing your deadline can mean that interest is capitalized, so it's added to your loan balance, and your monthly payment will increase for at least a month. So you're going to want to try to stay on top of it. We tell borrowers, put it on your calendar and make sure you don't miss it. On the next slide, I just want to reiterate, here's your checklist. First, you're going to visit studentaid.gov. You can contact your loan servicer or contact the Department of Education on their website to get the applications, submit your application, and then most importantly, if you need to stay in the program, recertify next year. That is so important. All right, with that, I think let's take a first break to go over questions. I've got a lot that have been coming in through the chat, and I think we're really excited to address them. I got a great question here from Tiffany, and I think this is probably a great question, Lindsay, if you're on the call, because I know your team works on income-driven repayment plans often. Tiffany wants to know, should she apply for an income-driven repayment plan right now, or should she wait till after December 31st when repayments are expected to resume?
Hey, Cody, and this is a great question. So I would say that she should definitely try to submit that IDR application now. We are expecting, there to be a lot of issues with the servicers as far as processing, majority of people's applications right up until that deadline. And so if you were to submit that right now, you'd be able to lock in that payment. You'd still, have that suspension of payments through the end of the year, and then you'd resume in January. So you want to make sure that you are sort of, taking advantage of this period of time to set things up and not waiting until the very, very end. There's sort of there's no harm in doing it right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And you're absolutely right. We've heard from so many borrowers that this pandemic has impacted and they need their payments secure. They need to feel secure that over the next year, they'll be able to afford their payments. All right. I got another great question about IDR programs. Natalia, maybe this is a good one for you because we talk a lot about this. But I've got a question from Dawn, and she wants to know, after completing an IBR program, one of these income-driven repayment programs, is the forgiven amount considered taxable income?
Yeah, Cody, that's a great question. And the truth is, we don't know. It says in the statute that they may be able to tax it. So we tell our borrowers to operate as if it is taxable income. But also, just from an advocacy point of view, this is something we're very aware of and fighting for to make sure that it's non-taxable. I want to clarify the difference, and Lindsay's going to get into this, that public service loan forgiveness programs are completely non-taxable. So it's not that all of the kind of things that are offered to you are taxable, but we do need to be careful with those income-driven repayment programs right now.
Great. I see this great question in the YouTube chat. Just a reminder to folks, if you're watching live on YouTube, enter your questions into the chat and we'll be addressing them there. But I've got a question here from Morgan, and Morgan wanted to know, how do you recertify in the middle of the year if you don't have a new tax return for income proof?
Hey, Cody, I can take that one if that helps.
Yeah, please.
So that's a great question. So aside from using your most recent tax return as sort of a proof of income, you can also use your pay stub. So a pay stub from the past 90 days. So that's what you'd be able to use if you did have an income. Let's say you became unemployed and had no income at all, you actually wouldn't need to submit any supporting documentation. But as far as, if you do have that, you can easily use that pay stub.
Great. I know that's been really important right now during the pandemic, that folks are aware of their option to recertify in the middle of all of this. I've got another question here from Art. I think it's worth reiterating. But Art asks, do we need to reapply every single year for 20 years to complete one of these programs?
Hey, Cody, I can probably take that one again. Go ahead, Natalia. Go ahead.
Yeah, Natalia, I saw you smiling. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, unfortunately, yes, right now, that is the case. You have to reapply every year. And I think you pointed out really well, and just for folks that are listening in, that while you have to do it every year, if anything changes with your income, you can absolutely reapply when that income changes, or you or notify them about your income changes. But yes, every year for 20 or 25 years. And again, we are making sure Congress knows about this. There's no reason that the IRS and the Department of Ed can't talk to each other and make this easier on you.
Great. I think with that, let's move on with the workshop. We'll take some more questions at the end. And obviously, as I mentioned in the YouTube chat, I know me and I see Ian from Savi and other folks here are answering a lot of questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Lindsay Clark at Savi, who's going to take us through public service loan forgiveness. Great.
Thanks so much, Cody. As Cody mentioned, I'm going to talk about public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF, as you might hear me refer to it from here on out. We're also going to touch on a few other forgiveness programs like teacher loan forgiveness and some cancellation programs as well. And we're really going to focus on the application process and what you need to know in order to actually qualify and get from start to finish. Some of these programs have been notorious as far as borrowers unable to actually access that forgiveness because of how complicated these technicalities have been And we're going to sort of hopefully walk through that and tackle that head on. Great. So I like to start out with sort of addressing first and foremost, how to best take advantage of forgiveness, and that's done through your repayment plan as well. So oftentimes when people come to these webinars and these sessions, loan forgiveness obviously sounds very appealing, but what I hope you leave today with is an understanding that when you think about your forgiveness, you have to think about your repayment. Those things go hand in hand. And when we talk about something like public service loan forgiveness, we are also at the same time talking about something like income-driven repayment plans. So by getting onto an income-driven repayment plan that's going to hopefully lower that monthly payment, you're ultimately maximizing the forgiveness that you might get. So it's sort of this combined benefit of, like I said, minimizing that monthly payment to maximize that forgiveness. Those two powerful programs, repayment and forgiveness working together, is sort of the ideal sweet spot here along the forgiveness program. So that being said, if we go on to the next slide, we're going to sort of go through the basics around public service loan forgiveness. So the deal with this program is essentially it started in October of 2007, and essentially it forgives the remainder of your student loan balance, whatever that may be. So $500,000 or $50,000, it doesn't matter. After you have made 120 quote unquote qualifying payments, okay, so that's why many people say about 10 years, working in a public service capacity. And we're going to talk about, there's some particular requirements of this program that are going to be necessary as far as your loan type and things like that. But that is the gist, all right? So these 120 payments do not need to be consecutive. They just need to be cumulative. In fact, I've rarely ever seen a borrower get PSLF forgiveness in 120 consecutive payments. Many people are human and they might go on a deferment or forbearance and take a break. But if you make it to that 120 total, you are potentially eligible to have those loans forgiven. And as Natalia mentioned, that would be tax-free. So you would not be at risk of any sort of tax bomb at the end of that 10 years. Now let's look a little bit further into actually how this works, because it is quite a bit of time between start and finish of when you'd be actually eligible to receive that forgiveness. So if we go on to the next slide, this is sort of going to show you, and it's very sort of visually clear how this actually works and what you would need to do in order to sort of first and foremost, as a diagnostic assessment, determine your eligibility. So first off the bat, you need to have a direct loan, okay? Direct loans are the only loan type that qualifies for public service loan forgiveness. Now, let's say you don't have a direct loan. You might have an older FFEL loan. That loan can become eligible through consolidation, as we've talked about earlier. However, you would only be able to start accumulating credits towards that 120 after the point of consolidation. All right, so if you are trying to take advantage of this program, one of the most important things you can do to set yourself up for success is to identify your loan type as early as possible. Because if it is a loan type that would require corrective action, you obviously want to do that as soon in your repayment as possible to maximize the amount of months towards that 120. So loan type, direct loans. Next, you need to work for a qualifying employer, okay? This is going to be any type of government position, federal, state, local, or tribal, as well as 501c3 nonprofit organizations. All right, so you can check, I'm going to show you a little bit later on how the Savi tool actually can verify whether your employer is qualifying. You can also probably do this through the IRS website or online, but that's going to be the next important sort of factor here. And then last but not least, you must be on a qualifying repayment plan. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail on the coming screen, but the qualifying repayment plan that's going to be most ideal here is an income-driven repayment plan, as we talked about on that last screen, all right? These income-driven repayment plans, as Cody went through, base that monthly payment on not your debt amount, but on your income. So it's going to help to minimize that monthly payment and hopefully maximize your forgiveness. Now, those three things, okay, so your loan type, your repayment plan, and your employer, you must have simultaneously, all right, in order to be eligible to start accumulating those credits. And how you track your progress towards that 120 over those 10 years is by submitting what's called employment certification forms. And you're encouraged to do this annually or whenever you switch jobs. So these forms get signed off by you, the borrower. They get signed off by your employer, certifying those dates of employment, and then they get submitted to Fed Loan Servicing. Fed Loan basically goes back and certifies that period of time, that amount of credits. And in an ideal world, you are able to track 12 credits over 12 credits year over year until you reach that 120, at which point you'd submit the final public service loan forgiveness application itself after that 120th payment had been made. So I know it sounds simple, but this is essentially the key to sort of reaching that finish line with public service loan forgiveness. A lot easier said than done, I know. So moving on to the next screen, we'll get a chance to see even in more detail what loans are going to qualify for this, what loan types, employers, and repayment plans. Let's start with loans. So direct loans, you're going to have unsubsidized and subsidized, direct grad plus loans, direct consolidated loans, and direct parent plus loans. Now, I would mention one thing about parent plus loans. Despite the fact that they are direct, they must be consolidated in order to be eligible for this program. Okay, so just like FFEL loans, those must be consolidated. Just wanted to point that out. As far as employers go, as I'd mentioned, all levels of government, federal, state, local, or tribal, as well as 501c3 nonprofits. There are also other critical public service careers that are eligible for this program. So don't count yourself out if you don't qualify for those first two. There might be other options as well that you would qualify under. And then as far as repayment plan goes, you've got your income-driven repayment plan, okay, and the 10-year standard repayment plan, all right? Moving on to what doesn't qualify. So what doesn't qualify as far as your loans, those older FFEL loans, those federal family education loans, unfortunately do not qualify. Now they can become eligible through consolidation, right? But you would only be able to start accumulating credits after that point of consolidation. Perkins loans also do not qualify. If your loans are in default, they are not eligible. And lastly, private student loans, unfortunately, are not going to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Looking at employers, government contractors, oftentimes this can get confusing with actual government positions versus contractors. Contractors are not eligible. Same thing goes for labor unions, 501c4 nonprofits and political groups, and any type of religious instruction. Last but not least, the repayment plans that do not qualify are the extended repayment plan, graduated repayment plan, the extended graduated repayment plan, and if you are in a deferment, forbearance, or default, that time in which you are in those sort of categories, you are not eligible and accumulating credits. So if you went out of deferment and got into, let's say, an income-driven plan, you could start to accumulate credits again. But when you're in that sort of status, you are not able to accumulate credits. Okay, moving on to the next screen. Great. So one of the things that I think most promising about this whole sort of forgiveness landscape has been the temporary expanded PSLF program. I think it's an indication of the Department of Education's acknowledgement in some of the wrongdoings and the sort of ills of the program early on for borrowers who, let's say, started in 2007. 2017 was the first year they were eligible to apply for this program, and they were rejected en masse. So temporary expanded PSLF, or TEPSLF, is sort of an attempt to help borrowers that, for lack of a better term, were screwed over by this process. So here are the qualifications around TEPSLF. First of all, you need to meet all of the PSLF requirements except repayment plan. So that is, you made 120 payments, you have direct loans, okay? You were working for a qualifying employer, but you just were not on the right repayment plan. Now, if this is you or anyone you know, the process for this would be submitting a PSLF application and actually getting rejected from the PSLF program, at which point you'd then be able to sort of escalate that and apply for temporary expanded PSLF. All right, it sounds a little bit convoluted, and it is, but borrowers are actually able to receive this forgiveness. We were working with a borrower at Savi a couple of weeks ago, a teacher who was rejected from PSLF and just received $75,000 in TEPSLF. It is a limited time fund, I would note, so you're highly encouraged to submit that as soon as possible, but this is a means of borrowers getting that forgiveness. And the email address in which you can sort of escalate that, that application is listed on that slide. All right, moving on to other types of cancellation, forgiveness, and discharge. So there are things like total and permanent disability discharge. So if you're totally and permanently disabled, you may qualify for discharge of your federal student loans and or your Teach Grant service as well. False certification discharge. So you might be eligible for discharge of your federal student loans if your school falsely certified your eligibility to receive a loan. That was always interesting to me. There's things like closed school discharge. So if your school closes while you're enrolled or soon thereafter, or soon after you withdraw, I should say, you may be eligible for discharge. There's discharge due to death. So federal student loans will be discharged upon the death of the borrower or of the student on whose behalf a plus loan was taken out. Okay, that's sort of a morbid thought here. There is such a thing as borrower defense to repayment. This one is a little bit more complicated. So you may be eligible for discharge of your federal student loans based on borrower defense to repayment if you took out the loans to attend a school and the school did something or failed to do something related to your loan or to the educational services that the loan was intended to pay for. It's a little bit vague there, and there's a sort of a lot of room for interpretation, but many borrowers have tried to pursue that. And last but not least, teacher loan forgiveness. If you teach full-time for 5 complete and consecutive years in a low-income Title I school, you are eligible to have up to $17,500, depending upon in what capacity you teach, forgiven on your loan. So let's just sort of a look at some of the other programs out there. Now, sort of wrap this up and where you can go to sort of make sure you're doing what you need to do and on the right track. First and foremost, always visit studentaid.gov. That's sort of the great resource where you can find anything you need. You want to keep verifying your employer. It qualifies if you change employers, and keep documentation. I can't emphasize that enough. That's very important. You want to make sure you're enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan and continue to work full-time and complete for 120 qualifying payments. All right. Now, moving on to trusted resources. So I'm a student loan borrower myself. I know what it's like to rely on the agent at Navient for advice about your student loans, and to realize that that basically sets you up for failure instead of success. And it's really hard to know where to turn and to know what you can rely on and what you can trust. And so we're going to walk through a few resources from Student Debt Crisis, from NextGen, and from Savi that hopefully can be a trusted and a sort of trusted aid to you in this process in whatever capacity that might be. All right, so let's move on to Student Debt Crisis tools. So studentdebtcrisis.org/tools is going to provide a wide range of tools. Their Borrower Resource Center, Federal Student Loan Assistance links, etc. So that's always one of the ways you can, easiest ways you can get a lot of help there. NextGen Resources on the next page. Great, so they're going to have links to studentaid.gov, where we've got federal repayment plans, federal repayment plan calculator, etc. Always, like I said, studentaid.gov is a great place to go for anything that you might need. And then we've got Savi's online enrollment tool. So this is, and you can find that at sdc.bysavi.com. We work with SDC to Student Debt Crisis to put this out. So essentially, this enrollment tool allows borrowers to go through, see their options, particularly around an income-driven repayment plan, and then actually submit that application for that income-driven plan on their behalf right then and there. So it gets to their servicer quickly, accurately, efficiently, and you can get enrolled in those programs fast. On the next slide, great. We just talked a little bit about Savi. I know we've mentioned this before. We're a public benefit corporation. We were founded in 2017, and we work with borrowers across the country, particularly in the public service, teachers, social workers, healthcare workers, and we really try to help people to optimize their federal repayment and forgiveness programs. And so we do this by taking them through a platform on the next slide, where we're able to check their eligibility around these programs, sort of like a diagnostic assessment, make sure they're on the right track. They're able to go through and even get enrolled onto the required repayment plans, income-driven repayment plans. And then we take it a step further and submit all of that digitized paperwork on their behalf. All right, so it's end to end, and it really ensures that borrower is able to achieve the desired outcome. And last but not least, this is just a look at the end slide of our tool, where borrowers are able to see their best potential repayment and forgiveness plan, read more about it, and then, like I said, get enrolled quickly and accurately. So at this point, I will turn it back over to Cody and Natalia. Thanks for letting me present.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And if we can just move to the next slide. Great. So I'm just going to quickly through how you can take action today. This is a free my my future summit. So we just want to make sure we're giving you tools. And I know that a lot of folks have been asking, and we've been sharing tools in the chat as well. So moving on. So we just want to keep stressing that one of the biggest reasons we're doing these workshops for you right now is that as it stands, payments for federal student loan debt will resume on January 1st. And that, pause that we've been on with 0% interest and $0 payments will end. So if we do not see an executive action or it added, through budget arguments on the Hill, in Washington, then we have to just right now operate as if we're paying on January 1st. But that's why we gave you all of these great repayment programs, so you can see that there are options, especially if you've had a reduction in hours or lost your job. Moving forward. Also, we are really, all the groups that have joined on, are fighting hard to cancel student debt. Our organization has taken action via petition. We have over 100,000 people that have signed asking Joe Biden to take action on day one of his presidency, which he can do so with just the signing, the swipe of a pen. This could stimulate the whole economy and actually help, target those who need the help the most. Moving on. And with that, we're not alone. Along with NextGen Policy, Student Debt Crisis, and 235 other groups, we called on Joe Biden to cancel student debt on day one. This is a moving coalition of hundreds of groups now that believe that this is a great way that we can stimulate our economy, and it is ultimately just the right thing to do. And I believe Cody's sharing the link in the chat. You can sign our petition. And also beyond that, we really want to hear your stories. So, using the hashtag CancelStudentDebt, let us know if you're a student loan borrower, if you've already paid off your loans, if you've never had student loans. This is going to benefit all of us in the economy, and we'd love to hear from you. And you can use hashtag CancelStudentDebt or hashtag ProtectBorrowers, and we really want to hear your story. All right. I think, Cody, we have some time to take questions, and we encourage everyone to stay on because NextGen is hosting a very generous giveaway after this, where we'd love to help all of you with at least a month of your student loan payments to get you through that awful January pause. So there will be some great stuff coming up at the 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock hour. But for the remainder of time, Cody, let's answer some questions.
Great. Let's see here. I've got a question from Jennifer. Natalia, this is a great one for you. Jennifer was asking, can you work part-time and qualify for public service loan forgiveness?
So it really depends on how your employer qualifies part-time, full-time. The minimum is 30 hours per week, and that is what the Department of Education considers as a full-time employee. So it may be that you're classified part-time at your job, but if you're working those 30 hours per week, then you will qualify.
Great. And I got another PSLF question. Lindsay, this is probably a great one for your team. Aaron was asking if there's a complete list of qualifying employers for public service loan forgiveness. I feel like your team maybe has put together something of the sort. That's a great resource.
Yeah, so as far as a complete list goes, you could check the IRS website, but you could also utilize our tool, sdc.bysavvy.com. We do have a database of all of the PSLF eligible employers. So when you get to the employer section and start typing in whatever employer you might have or whatever name that might be, it should pop up from that drop-down menu if it is an eligible employer. So I would say that's probably the easiest way to use that instead of trying to navigate through the IRS. And that link is sdc.bysavvy.com.
All right. Let's see here. A question from Tiffany. Tiffany wants to understand, do you apply for an income-driven repayment plan and public service loan forgiveness separately? She's a little confused about how the two programs work hand in hand.
Yeah, this is a great question. So they are separate. Income-driven repayment is a type of repayment plan. It's how you are going to repay your student loans potentially. And you could be on an income-driven repayment plan, regardless of, or completely sort of separate from public service loan forgiveness. So that is just a way of repaying your student loans. Now, as far as being eligible for public service loan forgiveness, you would need to be on that income-driven repayment plan. So that's how they sort of come together. So you would be able to enroll on one of the income-driven repayment plans. It doesn't matter which one. That would essentially lock in that part of the eligibility. And then you would be able to start tracking your credits towards public service loan forgiveness. So that's hopefully that was clear, but you don't necessarily need to be trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness in order to take advantage of income-driven plans. In fact, most people probably aren't trying to track or eligible towards public service loan forgiveness. Income-driven plans are simply a really great way for borrowers, particularly if you're struggling and your income maybe has decreased, to take advantage of that and lock in a low affordable payment rather than having that monthly payment be based on your debt amount. You're able to take advantage of, let's say, your income decreased, maybe you even became unemployed and your income was $0. You could lock in a $0 monthly payment for the next 12 months. So regardless of it's that, your payment or you become employed that next month, you're able to take advantage of that situation. So those are purely around that, your repayment options and possibilities, but they work together for someone who's trying to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness.
Great. And with that, unless there's one more quick question, Cody.
I think we've got one quick one because I know that a lot of people have this on their mind, but a lot of folks are asking how serious is the movement to cancel student debt right now? They're probably seeing it in the news, hearing about it online. Natalia, maybe that's something you can address because of the work that we've been doing.
Sure. Thank you, Cody. I will just say I've worked in this space for about a decade now, and this is the most serious I've ever seen it. And the most amount of orgs, nonprofits, grassroots organizations, labor groups that have joined on a real seriousness coming out of the Senate with the Schumer-Warren resolution. So I'll just say that, I have so much hope of what is coming in the future, but I know that we can't do it alone, and we need all of you to help us get it over the finish line. The only way we're going to do this is by building a bigger tent and making sure that we get your voices out there so people understand just how helpful and stimulative this will be for the overall economy. And with that, before we wrap up, I just want to give Lindsay another chance to talk about, real quick about the Savi office hours for anyone here that wasn't able to get their question answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Natalia. So if you just want to, if you still have questions, or if you want to just come in and chat, tell me your story, chat with other borrowers, share sort of anecdotal experiences, cautionary tales, best-in-class strategies. We're going to be going over to a Zoom link for the next hour where I and the Savi team will be taking any of your questions. I can help you sort of walk through the tool, but a chance to really maybe dig down even deeper into some of the things you might have been wondering about. So really excited to talk to any and everyone who wants to come join, or I can just talk to myself for an hour, but I hope to see you over there and be of help.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And thank you to Savi for offering this great service. for free for all of our student loan borrowers. We're very excited to have you on. All right, with that, I think we are going to go to the next slide. Okay, so now we have a really special treat, which is NextGen's Policy Prize Giveaway. And we have a really special guest host, a good dear friend of mine, Michael Torpy, and also Sam Singh will be joining us. Just to do a quick, sound camera check, do we have Sam and Michael on with us?
I'm here. This is Michael.
Great. Hello, Michael,
Hey,
and we still
Natalia.
have Sam.
Yes.
So,
Hi, Sam.
hello.
Hi.
So thank you both for joining us for this NextGen Policy giveaway. We're going to do this where Michael's going to ask questions to the audience, and then the first person to respond in the YouTube chat, that's important, it has to be in the YouTube chat, is going to win a prize of $350. That is about the average student debt payment. We know many of you pay so much more, but we're going to give away a ton of these prizes, one prize per person, but we want to help you all out as much as possible, as we said, especially for that January cliff. So make sure that you have your email on your YouTube account bio so that we can reach out to you and give you your prize. And I just want you to be aware that slowdown mode is now enabled in the chat, which means you're only going to be able to send a message every 10 seconds. This is just to ensure fairness for the winners. And then to claim your prize, please go to NextGen Policy channel and under the discussion, leave a comment. And you should be able to see that on your screen right now. And with that, as I said, I am so honored to have Michael Torpy. Michael did a phenomenal game show called Paid Off on True TV, which is the only game show to my knowledge about student loan debt, helping student loan borrowers pay off their debt. I think Michael may know some of the only people that have actually seen their debt be canceled. And he's in agreement with me that we don't need game shows to do it. We need to see this done by the federal government. Also, we're just so, Michael has been on shows like Veep and Orange is the New Black, and just so super honored to have you here today. Michael?
Well, Natalia, thank you for having me. You were such a help to me as I was trying to create this show to highlight the stories of our student borrowers and get money into the hands of people who really needed it. So thank you for your help with making Paid Off and for your continued friendship and for inviting me to be part of this today. For those who don't know, I made a game show called Paid Off that was designed to do a couple things. One, we wanted to highlight the student debt crisis for people who were shockingly still unaware of what was going on. We wanted to call out the groups that we thought were complicit. We wanted to highlight the banks, the universities, and our government in their failings of student borrowers. And we also wanted to put money in the hands of people who really needed it. I learned about student loans through my wife. I was incredibly privileged. When it came to college, my parents said that they would figure out a way to pay for it for me. And they did. They took out a line of equity on their home and they borrowed money so I could go be a theater major, which I don't know how excited they were about that. If you owe someone money, becoming a theater major isn't always the best decision. But I was able to go to school and study whatever my passion was. So I learned about debt when I met my wife, and she owed around $40,000 at the time. And she was struggling through it like, all of you are. She was making her monthly payments, but she was not making any progress. And right around the time when we were getting married was the first time that I booked an acting job that paid me any sort of money. And we took this check that I got and we wrote off her loans. We just decided we're going to get married. We'll have a fresh slate and we'll be able to move forward. I thought it was just made sense to put this in the past. And as we wrote out the check to pay off her loans, my wife just started crying. And in that moment, I felt so ashamed that I didn't understand everything that went into what she'd been carrying. the way that this burden was affecting every decision that she made, and seeing that load come off of her back was very powerful. And at the same time, I was very aware of how fortunate we were, how I work in an industry where you can stumble into a job that pays you enough money to get out of debt. And that's not an option for the majority of people out there. You know, if you're working at a nonprofit, if you're a teacher, no one's going to come up to you and say, hey, there's a huge bonus if all your students get 100 on this next math test. Like, that doesn't exist. So the struggle to get out of this debt is real, and it is really hard. And you know, that was an eye-opening moment for me, and what made me want to create this game show that would create that similar moment where people could all of a sudden be freed of their burden and show how that felt to America, show how many people were being held back and what it would do for these people to be able to lift that burden off them. So I'm excited to give a little bit of money away today with the support of NextGen. It was so great of them to set up this giveaway. And so without further ado, we're going to play a game called Non Sequitur. You know, Cody, I was in on the video before, and Cody dropped so much knowledge, like relentless knowledge. So we're going to try to make the trivia a little bit simpler. The way this game is played, I tell you a fact about the student debt crisis, and then I follow it with a question that has nothing to do with that fact about the student debt crisis. So if I can jump into it, Sam, Natalia, am I ready to go?
I'm ready. Sam, are you ready to announce our winners?
We are ready.
All right, here we go. Here's your first question. Americans are carrying $1.7 trillion of student debt, but who is the Queen of England? Americans have $1.7 trillion of student debt, but then again, who is the Queen of England? What's her name? She's got to have one.
All right. We
Sam?
have our first winner. The username is Gus Johnson.
Great. Gus Johnson with the correct answer of Elizabeth, I assume?
Yes.
Well done, Gus. That's $350 to you. Gus Johnson, that feels like you could be royalty too. It's just like a strong, solid, straight at you name. Question number 2. Women hold the majority of student debt. But if I have 12 pizzas and I want to have 50 pizzas, how many more pizzas should I order? I have 12 pizzas, but I want 50. How many more should I order? And I'm going to be honest, they're going to all be pepperoni. It's just the kind thing to do. When you go reaching for that next slice, you want there to still be some pepperoni left over. So I'm just ordering all pepperoni, and then you know if there's any pizza left, it's going to be pepperoni.
All right. And I think we have our next winner. It is going to be Danielle, and maybe I'm going to say this wrong, but Arcella.
All right, Danielle. Congratulations. The correct answer of 38 extra pizzas. Sounds delicious. Question number 3. Federal student loan payments are only on pause until December 31st. But how many fingers does Jimmy Carter have on his hands? How many fingers does Jimmy Carter have on his hands? Well known for his work with Habitat for Humanity. Has he kept them all? I don't know. You know, you got to use a lot of saws, the occasional hammer. Maybe one got in the way. I know this much, it wouldn't stop Jimmy Carter from doing the good work he does. He could probably go down to 6 fingers, and he'd keep going out there and banging away, helping people out. I mean, he gave up his peanut farm so he could become president. I think he'd continue to build a house without all his fingers.
All right. And our next winner with the correct answer of 10 is Art A.
Art A, congratulations. You didn't fall for it. He's still got all his fingers. He's careful. He's a careful carpenter. Next question. A student loan borrower has to work 10 years in public service to be eligible for loan forgiveness. But which planet gets closest to Earth? Which planet gets closest to Earth? Very specific phrasing of this question because it's not always closest. We're all just spinning around in this outer space, you know? We're on these wild ellipses, on these round rocks flying through outer space, and occasionally one is closer than the other. But which gets closest as we take our trip around the sun? Anyone right yet? Maybe just start listing planets. My very eager mom. I forget how it goes.
All right. Yeah, there are a lot of different planets out there listed, but the correct answer to Venus was by Missy Arney.
Congratulations, Venus. Great planet, and it gets the closest. Next question. There's growing support for President-elect Joe Biden to cancel student debt on his first day in office. But who played Michael Scott in the NBC sitcom The Office? See what I did with that one there? I took The Office from Joe Biden's office, and I loosely tied it into the NBC sitcom The Office. Some gentle wordplay, not a traditional non sequitur, but they still have nothing to do with each other. Who played Michael Scott in the NBC hit sitcom The Office? And now he's like a real actor. Does everything, does the dramas, does the comedies. He's got a election movie coming out. He's the real deal. People might have thought he's just a funny goof 'em up guy, but nope. He's got depth. He's got range. He's got heart. I don't know if he's won any awards, but he's won my ever-loving admiration at the very least. He's in 40-Year-Old Virgin. Sam, we got it?
We got it. So full name Steve Carell by Candace Brown.
Candace Brown, nailing it with Steve Carell. $350 coming your way. Here we are. We're in the backstretch here. Last 5 questions. If you haven't won yet, hang in. Question number 6. Over 45 million Americans are carrying student debt. But what is the capital of Alaska? 45 million Americans with student debt, and yet Alaska still has a capital. Questionable decision, but they're sticking with it. What's its name? What is the name of the capital of Alaska? I've been watching a lot about Alaska recently because my daughter enjoys the PBS program Molly of Denali. It's a great show. There's an episode where her grandfather plays a drum for the first time since its childhood. In the cartoon, he started crying and I started crying. I did not expect that, but it honestly moved me to tears.
All right. So
Molly of Denali. Yes, Sam.
So folks really know their capital is here. So we have Sam Poitra with Juneau.
Well done, Juneau. Congratulations, Sam. Question number 7. Americans over the age of 50 are the fastest growing group of people with student debt. But how many quarts of sport drink are in a gallon of sport drink? Americans over 50, fastest growing group of people with student debt. And yet, how many quarts of sport drink go in a gallon of sport drink? You're working hard on your keyboard right now, typing out this answer. Treat yourself to some sport drink after the workshop. Cody's been dropping numbers on you. You've been trying to keep up. Get yourself some sport drink. Figuring out your loans is exhausting.
We have our next winner.
Yes.
All right. Correct answer 4 goes to Megan Fitzgerald.
Megan Fitzgerald, 4 quarts in a gallon. Well done. Next question. Black women carry the most student debt, and the wage gap makes it harder for them to pay it off. But what is the least commonly used letter in the alphabet? Student debt highlights the racial and economic disparities in this country. And yet, what is the least commonly used letter in the alphabet? You got 26 to choose from. Don't choose a popular one because that's not going to be right. Choose the least popular one, the one that you probably avoid using at all costs.
We have a winner.
Yes.
All right, so we'll click on the draw there. So Victoria Martin answered correctly with the letter Q.
Victoria Martin, Q. Honestly, Q, there's nothing that a K and a W couldn't figure out without you. No offense. Next question. There are over 45 million Americans carrying student debt. But what fast food chain is the home of the Whopper? What fast food chain is the home of the Whopper? That means the Whopper gets its mail there. It means after a hard day of whopping, the Whopper takes its shoes off, flicks on the TV, maybe gets itself a cold drink, and just calls it a day. I'm done whopping. I'm ready to relax. What fast food chain is the home of the Whopper? Whopper takes its little bun off and hangs it on a little coat or a hat, right? I guess the bun's the hat. Maybe it's part of the head. I'm not sure how a Whopper works.
We have a winner.
Yes.
All right, the correct answer, Burger King, and that was by August Evans.
August Evans, Burger King, really nice. And we've made it, folks. This is our last question. Question number 10 for the last $350. Thank you again to NextGen for supporting this giveaway. Good luck to everyone still in the chat. Here we go. $2,853.88 is added to the total amount of outstanding student debt every second. But how many birds in North America weigh over 9,000 pounds? Over $2,000 added to the amount of student debt every second. And yet, how many birds in North America weigh over 9,000 pounds? 4.5 tons. How many are there? Where are they? If you see one, where is it? Keep your distance. That's a very big bird. Does it have an egg? What color's the egg? Is it protecting the egg? Don't get hurt. If you see a bird like this, don't engage it. Just take a picture and send it to me. I'm looking for a bird big enough that I can ride, is the truth. This was kind of a self-serving question. I've always wanted to ride a bird. And the majority of them they can't carry a man. They're not strong enough. So I'm asking all of you to do the research and see if there are any birds out there over 9,000 pounds. And if so, just let me know where it is.
All right, we have a winner. I think
we do.
We're going to give it to Nef Stradomos.
Okay, Nef. It's 0. It's a huge bummer answer. I was hoping for at least 4, but 0 is the answer. There are none that big. What can you do? But that's our giveaway. Congrats to those that won. And for the rest of you in this chat, maybe you didn't win money, but you won a lot of knowledge courtesy of Student Debt Crisis and the reps at Savi and NextGen. And so yeah, I'll hand it back over to Natalia, Sam, and Cody. And good luck, everybody out there. Use these great resources that these people have to help figure things out.
Thank you so much, Michael. We really appreciate you just coming on, dropping your own sort of knowledge for everyone, and just everything you've done for student loan borrowers in general. So we thank you for that. And I just want to have Sam go over the rules for the winners one last time so you can all make sure to collect your prizes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Natalia. And thanks, everyone, for trying your best. All winners, please be sure to leave a comment under discussion on our NextGen Policy channel. So we'll be able to connect with you and send your prize. And we have the slide up here to help you figure that out.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to everyone that participated in this workshop. Lindsay Clark at Savi, Cody Hunanian from our team at Student Debt Crisis, Sam Sang with NextGen Policy for not just joining us, but providing this whole summit for Free My Future, and also the wonderful NextGen giveaway. I hope you all make sure to claim your prizes right away. And a really special thank you to Michael Torpy for joining us and just always thinking about student loan borrowers and all the work you do. We really appreciate it, Michael.
Of course.
So with that, we're going to give you all a few minutes. There's a lot going on today. There will be another student debt workshop today at 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, for those of you that want to get information on student loans. And also there will be a little more information for those of you still in college right now, because this is the Free My Future Summit after all. So we want to make sure the future is bright for all of you. And just a special thank you again. Make sure to use the hashtag #CancelStudentDebt and hashtag #ProtectBorrowers and let us know your story. Thank you.